If you were to fold a piece of paper into an origami crane, you would have, without the addition of any matter, created something new. You now have a crane. However, you also have a piece of paper. All of a sudden, you have two things, and yet they're made up of the exact same particles and even subatomic particles. So then, how did you do it? How did you create something new when its atomic structure is the exact same as the paper it was before? These are some of the basic examples of ontology, the philosophy of existence. If you want a better explanation of that specifically than I could ever give you, I point you towards Vsauce's video, Do Chairs Exist? But I'm not here today to fully explain what ontology is, mostly because he already did, but rather to apply its arguments towards a new direction: art. I've long since been fascinated by and wanted to make a video on the existence of art. Like, what is it? If you're anything like my cousin Easton, this definition will be quite limited. However, if you're anything like me, the definition may be a bit broad. But don't worry, we'll be getting to all of that. Reality is a fickle thing. It majorly operates in a way that we do not understand, and yet we also are the only being, yes, you specifically, that can understand it. Let me explain. I believe that an objective reality, a natural world, does exist. Now, some theories of quantum mechanics do posture that observers may influence the very physical world we live in, specifically the double slit experiment, but quite frankly, I have not read up enough on that to really be qualified to talk about it. And it's also not entirely pertinent to this video's thesis. For now, we'll say that regardless of subjective experience, an objective reality does in fact exist. This reality then operates in a specific way, and although we don't understand its fundamental laws that well, they do exist. They cannot be changed, at least by anything that we can do. Sure, we can experiment and even pervert the very laws of nature, but those laws are still there to be messed with. They remain unchanged by us lowly humans. However, this doesn't mean you have no power in the equation. Subjective reality, where you are the gods of the universe, does also exist. You cannot create matter with your bare hands, but you can give a name to it. To go to Vsauce's explanation of ontology, the particles that make up the wood do objectively exist, and as we understand the world, the wood exists. It just does. However, where you gain power is in the chair. In an objective world, the chair does not exist, even if all the components needed to make one as we understand it do exist. Now, friend, a chair only exists because we deem it as an observer to exist. Your self-perceptions, and more importantly, the collective self-perceptions, deem it as existing. In this way, while we can't create matter nor destroy it, we can give it meaning, a name. And in a universe that, as far as we know, has no objective overarching meaning, the fact we are able to do this is important. Honestly, I at least think it's quite beautiful. But it goes even deeper than that. Sure, we gave wood the name of wood, but we did not create that bark. When I say create, I don't necessarily mean in some factory. A fallen log can be a seat. A metal pipe can be a chair if we dream hard enough. So it's not naming something that necessarily gives it power all the time, but rather it is the given purpose we attribute to something. If I'm tired, I will sit. And wherever I decide to sit, that will be my chair. That purpose, that meaning is what we create. And that just wouldn't be possible without you, the observer. Without your subjective reality, the chair would never exist. Nothing matters, but everything has a purpose. So then, how does art play into this? I want you to think of a little thought experiment with me. Let's say I go into the woods, Walden style, and there I see a couple of trees, sunlight filtering through their branches. These are trees and a star shining light on them. That's the objective facts. Something about it, it looks so beautiful. So you decide to sit down and paint the landscape, and suddenly you've done it. You've created your magnum opus. You, my friend, have created art. But should we limit our definitions so much that because you wrote a poem about it or made a painting on it, that now it's art? That because you banged a bunch of metal together yourself, as opposed to dropping a metal container on the ground, that is now music? Does intention matter that much? I don't know. We'll be getting to that later in the video. I don't like that. Not one bit. Because I believe it was already art before that moment you decided to paint it. And the result that you produced is just the recapturing of that beautiful moment. This definition of mine extends so far that not only is every traditional art piece undeniably art, everything is art. Art does not have to tell the story, yet it always does. How did those trees get there? And what bugs bit into those leaves to make the sunlight flitter in that exact way? There is beauty in these moments, but there is only beauty in them because you, as an observer, are around to appreciate them. The classic question of if a tree falls but no one is around to hear it, so did it make a sound? This dilemma we have reminds me of that, though it's not really about this. Because of course it made a sound, like a sound wave was produced. And while I understand again that the question is a bit more complicated than that, my answer is this. Sure, it made a sound. But did it make music? If you were there to witness it and the squirrels that scurry at your feet, then of course it did. Of course it made music. Even if you aren't around, maybe even then, maybe that's music too. Art is not just a painting. Rather, it is the very act of perception itself. Because you can look at anything and you can feel something. Art is really just the substance of the objective reality itself. The wood always existed. But you, yes, you, made it into a chair. And that chair is art. It is beautiful. If you fold a piece of paper and make it into an origami crane, then two things is at the same time. The paper and the crane. Well, the former was always going to ontologically exist no matter what. That crane, that piece of art, only exists because of you. Because you perceived it, and it made you feel something. You did not create the matter, but you did give it a purpose. Now, I realize my definition has a fatal flaw. Well, if everything in the universe that is perceived is art, then does any art actually exist? Am I spreading the definition out too wide? To answer that, I would simply say it does exist, and that this question supports the notion that we are truly the gods of our own perceived realities. Another issue remains. One posed by two of my friends. Does intention matter when creating art? Is AI art, well, art? If a dog puts paint on its paw and stomps on a canvas, is that art? If we were to look at this through the lens of intention matters, and it has to be artistic intention, then no, these two examples aren't art. But I feel as though this would also exclude even some films and such. If I were to write and direct a Marvel movie, am I doing it just for the money? If monetization is my intention, then am I really creating art? Well, I think so at least. Because there is no film that is purely made without monetary desires in mind. And likewise, I don't believe there is a single movie out there that exists without more artistic intentions. You just don't get into this business without some sort of dream, some pure intention. Even if it's become tainted over time, that dream will forever remain with you. At least I think so. Now, we could also look at this through the lens of it has to have some sort of intention behind it, and it doesn't really matter what that intention is. And this is where things get interesting, friends, because not to sound too philosophy minor on you, but what even is intention? Like, monetary is easy enough to define, but artistic? I feel as if the only definition that anyone can come to is a personal one. For myself, that intention isn't so much thought of, but rather is a pull. Like something tells me I literally need to do this, second to only breathing oxygen. When I'm locked in, I am locked in. But this isn't some grander intention. Rather, it seems to me it would be more accurate to say that I do it just for the sake of doing it. That artistic intention to me means doing something for literally no grander reason. Even sometimes to the point where you don't really want to do it, but just have to. Again, this is my own personal definition, some other examples of art being something not specifically done for survival. But I don't believe any of this explicitly excludes AI art. It doesn't make it any less horrible for human artists or especially the environment. I am definitely not here advocating for AI art in the slightest. But I still do believe it is art. Unless you believe only a human is capable of art, then the dance in the honks of the local geese is itself an expression. And my definition of art in its purest form would be observing that dance, or hearing that honk. And that's it. In this way, you can also think of the geese here being the canvas, with your eyes being the paint. An observation of an expression of the natural world. That is what I call art. Art is life, but not objective life. It is not the beating heart, the blood pumping within your veins, nor the gravity that keeps your cardiovascular system running smoothly. Rather, it is the soul that gives that heart a reason to keep beating. The soul that gives it purpose. And that, I think at least, is beautiful. And, as always, thank you for watching.